Chapter 4, Military. As Mao said, power comes out of the barrel of a gun. This basic fact, regardless of the technologies, has been a prime factor in the underpinning of power in all our societies from the cave to the stars. Financial power has always ruled, that has always needed the support of military power to survive in any one area. And military power and violence has always been endemic in our society and has always been used by the financial sectors for protection and support. And when the year dot, violence and power and finance have marched hand in hand in the society of man. As civilization over the past few hundred years emerged and divided into nations, the rise of armies to protect those power bases became more and more necessary, and this introduced a new, or maybe old, paradigm in society, established to protect or conquer lands, people and nations. It soon became obvious to military leaders within nations that they wielded the ultimate power. This is something that modern governments tend to ignore, and it is something that is always there. Because of such danger historically, the military have maintained a unique position in society. Their basic training to fight and kill had to be handled within the boundaries of society. To accomplish this, a military within nations orchestrated a special role for themselves. They developed a separation from society, yet maintained the socially acceptable belief that they existed to serve the nation and protect the people. And this is true, but only up to a point. Ostensibly under the control of governments, the military maintains a separate existence with its operators free of civilian oversight and with its own legal system. We must not forget that the military's basic training duty is war and killing. To be effective requires a strict regime of physical training and perhaps more necessarily mental training and brainwashing. Until recent years, this was accomplished by punishment and abuse, especially where military intake began with younger recruits. This type of training was designed to promote instant obedience in orders that may save a life on the battlefield, but destroys personal independence and free will. Down the years, this separation from society promoted a culture that was closed and secretive, this allowing the practice of violent bullying and sexual abuse to flourish without censure. This abuse was tolerated, even encouraged, in the belief it toughened up the victim and mentally anesthetized them to practices they might be called on to perform in a place of war. Military force, war, etc. is of course a power strategy employed by all nations. In most cases, army service is compulsory under the guise of patriotism, but in some cases it is voluntary, appealing as it does to a section of humanity that is attracted to the promise of power. Governments in our violent world have always nurtured military support, not least for their own protection against their own people, a subtle point that the military never forgets. Fallen soldiers are treated as heroes. They are awarded medals and honours. The public lend praise and support, but nobody asks them others. Financial power may be the dominating factor in our world, but it is military power that is dominant as a final resort. In the world we've built on, since the two great wars to end all wars, all we've done is created new players in the game of power. With World War II came the military defeat of Germany and Japan. This shifted power dominance to America and the nuclear bomb, Russia. 50 years of power posturing followed until the financial strength of America prevailed, which led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. For a while we hoped peace would come to the world, but it was not to be. American hubris as masters of the world has been short-lived. Her military might should have made her role as a world policeman easy until another branch of power raised its head. Terrorism and a new brand of terrorism melded with a fundamental religion that makes it impossible to defeat. Unfortunately, this has collided with American financial corruption, from which the Western world has barely survived. The problems it caused, however, has fed the markets with a concentration of resources, power and finance, and the subsequent destruction of livelihoods, jobs and conditions of ordinary people. This scenario is not yet completed and carries the seeds of fascism and revolt throughout Europe. And now we must look at the last and newest military in the world, China.